Guys, it's Sarah, and today we are going to talk about all the books that I read in the month of August. I did read 8 books. I finished 8 books, and then I do have one DNF for the month, so I'll talk about that as well. And I think this can go a little bit quickly because 4 of the books that I read, I have other videos for them where I wrap them up with more of my thoughts. So I'm just going to link those videos down below for you, but I'll tell you what my star rating is and kind of my overall feelings really quickly. But if you want more in-depth stuff where I kind of talk a little bit more about it, I will link those videos down below for you. So let's go ahead and start with those. I did read 2 of my 5-star predictions for our last round in the month of August. So I read The Lost Man by Jane Harper. Really, really loved this one. I gave it 5 stars. It was so atmospheric, set in the Australian outback. There's a murder mystery. It was fantastic. And then I also read American Predator by Maureen Callahan, which is a nonfiction true crime book about Israel Keys, who is a serial killer, and he was considered one of the scariest ones of our time. So this is kind of his story about how he got captured and him kind of telling a little bit about his crimes and his processes to the police and everything like that. And this one I gave 4 stars. So if you want more of my in-depth thoughts on this and kind of what I loved and didn't love about both of these, check out my 5-star prediction follow-up that I will link down below. And my 2 actually most recent reads, these are the last 2 books that I finished, but I do have a separate reading vlog for them because I accidentally ended up reading my number 1 and number 2 most anticipated books of the entire year at the same time. And I didn't even mean to do that. It just kind of accidentally happened. So I went ahead and vlogged that experience for you. So much more of my thoughts about these books are in there. It is completely spoiler free, so you're safe to go watch it if you haven't read either of these books, but I do talk a little bit more about how I was feeling in the moment while reading these. The first one is The Last Housewife by Ashley Winstead. This is a very, very dark book that follows cults, and our main character was part of a cult, and you kind of follow her with that. There's a murder mystery in here as well. And not only did I love it so much, I read it in 3 days. I could barely put words together. I still can't about this book, and it is now my favorite book of the year, and I don't anticipate that changing. I also read Book Lovers by Emily Henry, which is an adult romance, and it was fantastic. I absolutely loved this book, and I gave this one 5 stars, and I loved it. It was a great time. So if you want to see more and see me actually reacting kind of live to these while I was reading them, I will link my reading vlog down below. Okay, so the other books that I read, I, on a whim, picked up this book and ended up reading this with one of my subscribers, and we read The Sea of Tranquility. This is by Katia Millet, and I featured this one in my video that I did of all the books that have been sent to me from subscribers or that were on my gifted cart, either from subscribers or from people in my real life who have just given me books. This one was given to me by my friend Danielle, and I finally picked it up. And I had talked to one of my subscribers about buddy reading, and we were trying to pick something. And so I just kind of said, hey, let's just read this one because it's been on my shelves for a while. I'm kind of ready to get it read. And I always hear amazing things about this book. So we both read it, and neither one of us liked this. I'm definitely in the minority on this book, you guys. This is a very popular book, and so many people love this book. And I just didn't. I guess I maybe could see why people like it, but it didn't work for me at all. So this is a young adult novel that follows a young girl who is in high school. She moves to this new place, and she has made the choice to be silent, so she doesn't speak, and that was her choice. Something happened to her in her past that has caused this to happen, and you see her going to a new school, meeting new people, trying to navigate this whole new place while she is voluntarily mute. And we also follow a boy at the school who she ends up crossing paths with. He has also experienced some tragedy in his life, and he is dealing with it in his own way as well. Okay. So much angst in here, a lot of teenage angst, which I get, but these are also 2 very young people who are dealing with very, very adult situations in their lives, which is not the norm for the most part. And I I didn't understand a lot of the decisions that either one of these characters made, and it drove me nuts. There were also the very typical teenagers in here as well. Like their best friend was supposed to be like the comic relief, which I get, but he drove me nuts too. And I'm like, why are you doing this? Just all the decisions that were made in here by these characters, I was like, but why? But why are we doing this? Why is this a decision you're making? Like, I couldn't even really understand why they were making the decisions that they were making. And I even said out loud while I was reading it, I was like, you're supposed to be her friend. What are you doing? Like, I don't know, guys. I didn't enjoy my time reading this. And I spent the whole time just going, but why though? Yeah, I don't know. It wasn't for me, guys. It really wasn't. I am going to unhaul this, but it does have some water damage on it. So I don't even think I want to try to sell it on Pango. Maybe I could do it for like a couple bucks or something. I don't know. Maybe not. And the spine is cracked. I might just throw this in a free little library. But yeah, it just wasn't for me. I gave it 2 stars. Okay, a big book that I finished, did not start, I finished in the month of August is The Count of Monte Cristo by Alexander Dumas. I did a read along with this from a couple of other booktubers, and we spent 2.5 months reading this book. So I did start this in early June and finished it in mid-August. I finished it right before our reading retreat, which was perfect. And I loved this book, you guys. This is definitely a classic. It's huge. It's definitely something I feel like kind of falls into a big overwritten book, but I wasn't mad about that. The things that kind of went off the rails a little bit from the story didn't bother me quite as much. And it wasn't as much as I have read in some other really long classics. So it wasn't enough to hinder my enjoyment of this book. I did listen to this. I listened to the audiobook that was narrated by Bill Homewood, which was fantastic because he did a lot of really good voices for the different characters. This follows a young man named Edmond Dantes, and he is in the prime of his life. He's young. He has a job that he loves. He's about to get married. He is just living his best life, right? And then something happens at a party and he ends up getting arrested. Like the police come specifically for him and they arrest him for treason, and he didn't do anything. So he goes to jail thinking this is all going to get cleared up because I didn't do anything. It'll be fine. They'll realize their mistake and everything's going to be fine. No, he gets put in jail. He's framed pretty well. And he learns while he's in jail that these 3 different people have framed him for this crime to get him out of their way because he's holding them all back from something. And while he's in jail, he makes a connection that helps him to not only escape, but to figure out how to get revenge on these people who basically ruined his life. And it was so great. It was really good. It was very smart. I really liked Edmund's patience and the way he thought through his revenge strategy and the way that it was carried out. It was all just so very meticulous and left no room for mistakes. And he took his time. He had a lot of time to think about this and to plan things and to execute them. And I thought it was great. And it just full of drama. And I loved it. I really, really loved this book, and I'm really happy about that. So this is one that's definitely going to stay on my shelves. I gave it 5 stars, and I can actually cross this off my Great American Read list as well because this was on there. So that's exciting. And yeah, so I can officially say I've read this and I loved it. I do not plan to watch the movie because I've heard the movie's awful and does not follow the book at all. So there's no point. Okay, the next one that I read, I started during our reading retreat and then I finished it afterwards, but I read almost half the book during our 24-hour reading retreat, which was fantastic. And that is Reckless Girls by Rachel Hawkins. And this one, I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed this one. This is kind of a thriller. It gets more thrillery towards the end. And it follows a girl and her boyfriend who are living in Hawaii, and she kind of loses her job in a pretty funny way. And so they end up getting hired by some tourists who want them to take them over to a deserted island that is pretty infamous for being a refuge during World War II, and some apparently terrible things happen there. And it's kind of just one of these spooky stories, but people want to go there to say that they've been there type thing. So these tourists hire them. They go out on her boyfriend's boat and they go to this deserted island. They plan to stay there for a little bit, and then they're going to all come back home and say that they had that experience. So she and her boyfriend really need the money, so they take them up on this offer and go. And the thing about this island is that it has been notorious that people disappear on this island as well. So they're kind of very curious, morbidly curious about that as well. So I will say that these people go and not all of them get off the island. I'll say that. That's all I'm really going to say because a lot happens in here. I will say the really creepy, scary kind of nonstop action takes a while. It takes a while to get there in this book. But once it was there, I was just like, going. And I did enjoy it. And there's a lot of just secrets and bad people doing bad things, like that type of stuff for sure happening. And as you're getting to know these characters, you're kind of trying to figure out what they're hiding and, all that kind of stuff. You're also getting a little bit of glimpse into the past for a lot of these characters too. So there's things that had happened before that are kind of tying into their behavior today. So there's that as well, which I appreciated. I gave this 4 stars only because it took quite a while to kind of get to that, gripping action for me. I kind of wish it was a little bit more dispersed throughout the book, but the action was good when you got there. It was worth the wait. And there's a lot of cursing in here. And I mean, almost every other page, there's an F-bomb or 2. So if you do not enjoy cursing in your books, this is going to be a little overkill. So just beware of that. That was really the only thing I could think of that in here that was really like, whoa, concerning. Like if you don't like cursing, this is not going to be the book for you, trust me. But other than that, it was really good. I really enjoyed it. So 4 stars. This one I'm actually going to keep. I do have some book darts in it. So I did dart it up a little, actually quite a bit. Wow. I actually did put quite a few book darts in here. So I'm going to hang on to this one, and I definitely want to read more from Rachel Hawkins. And the last one I have to talk about is The Last House on the Street by Diane Chamberlain. This one I listened to on audio. It was narrated by Susan Bennett, and she did a good job. I really enjoyed her narration of this one. This is a dual timeline book that follows a woman who buys a house, and I'm trying to remember if I feel like they built the house like in this new development area in North Carolina. And one of her neighbors is a woman who has lived there her entire life. And she is there right now, like visiting her family. And then she meets her and we start learning things about the property that she has built this house on and its history. And we learn the history through following the neighbor's past timeline when she was living there and what was happening with her family while she was there. So the present timeline is 2010. The past timeline is 1965. And we are in the middle of civil rights, Martin Luther King, and the woman who at this time, she's a young woman, she feels very passionately about helping the African-American community in her town and in her state. She feels very passionately about helping them register to vote because that is something that they're waiting on the current president at the time to sign a bill giving them those rights. And to make it easier for them. They were hindered because they had to pass a literacy test in order to be able to vote, but a lot of them could not read at the time. And that's because they were limited for access to good schools. And so that really put limitations on them. Like, sure, you can vote, but we're going to throw this barrier in your way and make it really hard for you to do that. And so she is fighting that. She is waiting on her group that she's a part of is waiting on the president to sign a bill that's going to counteract that. That I thought was very interesting. And so you see her going into the community and trying to help people. So we are also dealing with a ton of racism in this book, in this timeline, because it is everywhere. It's everywhere and it's bad. So we're talking Klan makes an appearance in here, and people she thinks she loves and knows are making their true feelings known. So you're getting a whole lot of that. So if that's something that's hard for you to read, just be wary. The past timeline is very, very heavy on that. And you're going back and forth a little bit. Okay, so I ended up giving this book 4 stars. The reason is because I kind of wish this was only the past timeline. I wish this book was only the past timeline, and that's it. The present timeline didn't seem very relevant. When we were in the present, I was just like kind of listening to it to get through it, to get back to the past, because I did enjoy the past timeline. I thought the story was interesting, the tensions were high, and it kept me very interested the entire time. But the present timeline to me didn't seem necessary. There wasn't enough going on in the present timeline to keep me interested. I felt like it was just kind of there, and it was just there to tie things together from the past. I'm like, you could have just tied things together from the past with an epilogue. Like that could have been fine. Maybe following Ellie in an epilogue and what happened at the end of this book, which I really did enjoy. Like that could have been an epilogue instead of multiple chapters throughout leading up to it. I hope that makes sense. So that's the only criticism for me for this one. Otherwise, it was really good. Diane Chamberlain is a fantastic author, and I will read anything that she writes. I really, really liked it a lot. And yeah, so 4 stars for this one. Not sure that I need to keep this one on my shelves, to be honest. It's definitely not something I will ever reread. So, and it's not like a favorite by any means. So, I will probably unhaul this one, but we'll see. I'm gonna sit on it for a little bit first. Okay, and let's talk about the DNF, because I did have one. I started this book and then put it down. That's The Glittering Court by Rochelle Mead. I started this and I was reading it, and then I just kind of realized I didn't care. I was picking it up and I just kind of felt like, all right, okay, things were happening, and I was just like, meh. So, yeah, I didn't care about what was going on in this book. And I knew that this was going to be something where I would just read this one and I wouldn't read the rest of them, because there are other books in this series. And so I just kind of felt like, what's the point? I kind of don't care. These characters are not really doing it for me. And it's all about the characters. So like, yeah, I didn't care. So I put it down, and it's fine. So I'm DNFing this one. I did get 125 pages in, I think. Yeah. So I got 125 pages in. So it was a good effort. And I just realized, I don't think this is for me. I don't think this author is for me, because this is the second book I've tried from her. I did read one quite a while ago, and it was just fine. So I just don't think that this is an author I'm going to need to pick anything else up from in the future. And that's okay. So DNF on this one, definitely on hauling. Okay, guys, that is it for me. I finished 8 books in the month of August, DNF'd one, and it was a pretty great reading month for everything that I read. I really only had one that I finished that I didn't enjoy, but all the other ones were 4 and 5 stars. So that's a really good reading month for everything that I finished. And I read 2 of my favorite books of the year. So very happy about that. Let me know down below if you guys have read any of the books that I talked about. Let me know your thoughts, and I will see you guys again soon. Hope you have a great day. Bye.